The restaurant glowed with golden light, and laughter floated from nearby tables. But for Ethan, the warmth didn't reach his heart. He sat stiffly, eyes flicking between his mother, Margaret, and his younger brother, Ryan. The air between them was tense, almost electric. Margaret had invited him to dinner under the pretense of catching up, but Ethan knew his mother too well. She never wanted to talk unless she had something to criticize. She sat with perfect posture, her expression sharp, polished, and cold. Ryan scrolled through his phone beside her, a faint smirk playing on his lips, as if he already knew where this was going. Ethan had dressed carefully tonight, a clean shirt, pressed trousers, hoping that maybe, just maybe, this dinner would be different. He had some good news to share. After years of struggle, his small startup had finally secured a big contract. He had imagined his mother's surprise, her rare smile, maybe even a proud word or two. But when she finally looked up from her menu, he saw something in her eyes that crushed that hope before she spoke. "So," she said, her voice calm but sharp enough to cut. "I heard you quit another job." Ethan froze, his fork halfway to his mouth. Ryan chuckled under his breath, not looking up. "That's the fourth one in 2 years, isn't it?" She continued, as if reciting a fact from memory. "You just can't seem to stick with anything. I don't understand how someone so smart ends up making such poor choices." The people at the next table paused their conversation. Ethan felt their glances brush against him like invisible needles. His mother always spoke loudly, intentionally enough to make sure others could hear. He took a slow breath. "I didn't quit. My contract ended. I'm focusing on my own work now." Margaret raised an eyebrow, unimpressed. "Your own work? Oh, that little business idea you keep talking about? Ethan, not everyone's meant to be an entrepreneur. You can't just keep chasing dreams that lead nowhere." She smiled faintly, the kind of smile that wasn't warm. It was a weapon disguised as concern. "You need to be realistic. Ryan already has a stable job, his own place. You're 30 and still figuring things out." Ryan looked up, pretending to be humble. "Mom, don't compare us," he said gently, though his tone carried quiet pride. "Ethan just needs time to find what suits him." The false kindness stung worse than the insult. Ethan stared at his brother, the golden son, the one who could do no wrong. Ryan had been their mother's favorite since childhood. He had the charm, the confidence, and the perfect job in finance that Margaret bragged about to her friends. Ethan had learned early that no matter what he did, he would always fall short of Ryan's shadow. Margaret sighed, setting down her glass. "You know, Ethan, I tried to guide you, but you never listen. You think you're too smart for advice. Maybe it's time you face reality. You're not where you should be. You've wasted your potential." The words sliced through him. His throat tightened, but he refused to let her see him break. Years of swallowed anger rose inside him like a storm. He remembered every insult disguised as advice, every dinner where his achievements were ignored while Ryan's smallest success was celebrated. He remembered how she laughed when he told her about his dream to start his own company. "You run a business? You can't even manage yourself." He stared at her now, her hand resting elegantly beside her wine glass, her diamonds catching the light. Diamonds bought with money she didn't even realize came from him. "Maybe," he said slowly, his tone quiet but steady. "You should be careful who you call a failure." Margaret blinked, momentarily thrown off by his calmness. "Excuse me?" He leaned forward slightly. "You're so sure I've achieved nothing. Tell me then, who's been paying your credit card bills for the past 6 months? The restaurant noise faded. Her glass stopped halfway to her lips. Ryan's smirk disappeared. Ethan continued, his voice soft but sharp. "The deposits that show up like magic at the start of every month. The ones you thought were from your savings account. That wasn't luck. That was me. The son you just called a failure." For the first time, Margaret looked unsure. "What are you talking about?" "You had overdue payments," Ethan said, not raising his voice but making sure every word landed. "You called the bank, remember? They told you it was handled. It was because I handled it. You said once you didn't want to owe anyone, so I didn't tell you. I just paid it quietly. But I guess that still makes me a disappointment, right?" Ryan stared between them, speechless. Margaret's hand trembled slightly, and her confident posture cracked for the first time. I didn't know, she stammered. Ethan nodded. I know you never ask. You just assume I have nothing to offer. You assume Ryan takes care of everything. You assume I'm still that confused kid who needed help. But the truth is, I've been standing on my own for years. And sometimes, I've even been the one helping you. The silence that followed was so deep, it drowned out the clinking glasses and chatter around them. The waiter paused nearby, sensing the tension but pretending not to notice. Ethan didn't care who was listening anymore. For years, he had tried to earn her respect with silence and patience. Tonight, he let his voice speak for all the times he hadn't. Margaret's face hardened again, trying to regain control. You think one good deed erases everything? You're still reckless, still chasing impossible dreams. Ethan's eyes met hers, calm and clear. Maybe, but at least I'm chasing something. You've spent your whole life tearing others down so you can feel taller. I'm done letting that break me. He pushed back his chair. The screech echoed through the restaurant. Ryan reached out as if to stop him, but Ethan shook his head. Enjoy your dinner. I just wanted you to know what failure really looks like, and it's not me. He turned and walked out, leaving the stunned silence behind him. The air outside was crisp and cool, and for the first time in years he could breathe. The city lights shimmered on the wet pavement as he walked toward his car. His hands were shaking, but not from fear, from release. He had carried the weight of her judgment his entire life, and tonight, he had finally set it down. As he reached his car, he glanced back through the restaurant window. His mother sat frozen, staring at the empty chair where he had been. Ryan leaned toward her, his lips moving, but she didn't respond. She just sat there, lost in thought. Ethan didn't smile. There was no triumph, no sense of victory, just a deep, heavy calm. He had spoken his truth, and in that truth, there was freedom. But beneath that freedom was something darker, something that whispered that this wasn't over. Revenge wasn't supposed to feel this hollow. He got into the car and gripped the steering wheel, his reflection staring back from the windshield. He had dreamed of this moment, the day his mother would finally be silent, finally see his worth. But now that it had happened, the silence didn't feel satisfying. It felt strange, almost empty. Still, as he started the engine, he knew one thing for sure. He would never let her define him again. No amount of her approval or rejection would decide his worth. He had spent years chasing her validation, but tonight, he had found something better, his own voice. The car pulled into traffic, lights streaking past the windows. Somewhere behind him, Margaret sat in the ruins of her pride, and for the first time she couldn't hide behind words. And though Ethan didn't yet know it, this moment, this quiet, painful victory, would change everything that came after. It was the night the balance of their relationship shifted forever. Inside that restaurant, Margaret finally understood something she had refused to see for years. The son she called a failure had become the one person strong enough to stand up to her. And outside, under the city lights, Ethan realized that sometimes silence isn't the end of an argument. It's the beginning of truth. Ethan left the restaurant with his heart pounding, his chest tight, and a strange feeling crawling under his skin. The night was cool, but his hands were burning. The sound of traffic and laughter in the distance felt unreal. Everything around him blurred. The glowing signs, the passing cars, the people walking past him. He had finally said everything he had held back for years. His mother's shocked face kept replaying in his head like a broken film reel. For years he'd dreamed of shutting her down, of seeing that proud, sharp look crumble, and tonight he did. But as he sat in his car, gripping the steering wheel, he didn't feel powerful. He felt empty. He drove without direction, the city lights sliding over his windshield like ghostly streaks. Part of him wanted to celebrate, but another part whispered that he had crossed a line he couldn't uncross. He parked near the waterfront, staring at the dark ripples of water. His mind wouldn't stop spinning. The anger that had burned in him for years was gone, leaving behind only exhaustion. For years he had lived under his mother's voice, her judgment, her criticism, her coldness disguised as care. He had wanted to prove her wrong, not just with words but with success. And yet, when the chance came, When his company finally started working, she had still called him a failure. That was what hurt most. That no matter what he did, he was never enough. He pulled out his phone. Messages were already piling in. His brother Ryan had texted first. "What was that, man? You went too far." Ethan didn't reply. Then came a string of missed calls from his mother. He deleted them without listening. The satisfaction from earlier was fading fast, replaced by something heavier, guilt mixed with sadness. He had told himself that confronting her would bring peace. Instead, it had opened a door he didn't know how to close. The next morning, Ethan woke to silence. His apartment was filled with sunlight, but he felt cold. His phone buzzed again. Another call from Ryan. He ignored it and focused on his laptop. Work had always been his escape. His small startup had finally landed a big deal, and investors were showing interest. He should have been thrilled. Instead, his thoughts kept drifting back to the restaurant, to his mother's trembling hands and lost expression. By the third day, Ethan stopped pretending he was fine. He listened to one of her voicemails. Her voice cracked through the speaker. "Ethan, what you did was cruel. You embarrassed me in front of everyone. I don't know who you've become." Then her tone softened. "I didn't mean to hurt you. You know I just want what's best." He turned off the phone, jaw tight. That was always her pattern. Hurt first, then play the victim. But even so, the sound of her voice made his chest ache. The next few days passed slowly. He threw himself into work, staying late at the office, barely eating. He was building something real now, something that would finally prove her wrong. But at night, when the city went quiet, the thought returned. What if revenge had made him no better than her? He told himself she deserved it. But a small part of him, one he couldn't silence, whispered that he had gone too far. Ryan called again. This time Ethan answered. "Mom's not doing well," Ryan said. His voice sounded tired. "She hasn't been sleeping. She's barely talking to anyone." Ethan stayed quiet. Ryan sighed. "You think you won because you embarrassed her? You didn't. You just made her hate herself more. You should have just talked to her." Ethan's voice was flat. "Talk? She never listens. You know how she is?" "I do," Ryan said softly. "But you don't understand her like I do. You think she's strong, but she's just scared. Dad leaving broke her. You were too young to see it. But she's been holding that anger ever since. You just happen to be the one she lets it out on." Ethan felt a sharp pang in his chest. He wanted to argue, but the truth in Ryan's voice stopped him. He hung up soon after and sat alone for a long time. Maybe Ryan was right. Maybe their mother's cruelty came from pain she never dealt with. But knowing that didn't erase the years she made him feel worthless. It didn't change the damage. One evening, Ethan went for a walk through the park near his apartment. The city lights flickered through the trees, and the wind carried the faint smell of rain. He passed a young family, a mother laughing as her son chased pigeons. For a moment he stopped and watched them. The sight made him ache in a way he couldn't explain. He had never known that kind of warmth growing up. Their laughter felt like something stolen from him. He sat on a bench, staring at the wet pavement. A question echoed in his mind. Was I seeking justice or just revenge? The more he thought about it, the more he realized the two weren't the same. Justice was about making things right. Revenge was about making someone feel your pain. And that night at the restaurant, all he had wanted was for his mother to feel small, the way she made him feel his whole life. The realization hit hard. He wasn't proud of what he did anymore. The look on her face, it wasn't victory he saw. It was heartbreak. The next week, Ryan dropped by his apartment. Ethan opened the door to find his brother standing there with a tired expression. "She's been asking about you," Ryan said. "She won't admit it, but she misses you." Ethan looked away. "She'll get over it, will you?" Ryan asked quietly. The words hung in the air. Ethan said nothing. Ryan left soon after, but the question stayed with him. Would he get over it? Or would he keep carrying the bitterness that had defined his life? That night, Ethan sat by his desk, staring at the framed photo of their family from years ago. His father was still there back then, smiling, before everything fell apart. His mother's face in the photo was softer, younger, her eyes full of life. It made him wonder when she had changed, or if she always had that hardness inside her. The following morning, Ethan got an email from the bank. His automatic payments to his mother's account had failed. He had canceled them the night of the dinner out of anger, but seeing her name on the screen stirred something in him. He remembered how she used to pack his lunches, stay up late to help him with projects, how proud she looked when he got his first scholarship. Those moments were rare, but they were real. Maybe she didn't know how to love in the way he needed, but she had tried in her own broken way. He sat for a long time, debating whether to call her. His pride told him not to. His heart told him to stop running. Finally, he picked up the phone, then hesitated. What would he even say? "I'm sorry for humiliating you, but you deserved it." That sounded wrong. He put the phone down and buried his face in his hands. Ethan realized something that night. Revenge had given him a voice, but it hadn't given him peace. He had shouted his pain into the world, and it echoed right back at him. His mother's silence, her guilt, it didn't heal anything. If anything, it made the hole inside him deeper. The next day, he went to his office early, trying to distract himself. His assistant greeted him with a smile. "Congratulations, sir," she said. "We got the investor's approval." He forced a small smile. That's good news. But inside, there was no joy. What good was success if he couldn't share it with the people he loved, even the ones who had hurt him? That evening, as the sun set behind the skyline, Ethan stood by his window, watching the light fade. He thought about his mother, her pride, her flaws, her pain. He didn't forgive her completely, not yet. But for the first time, he wanted to try. He didn't want to keep living with bitterness gnawing at him. He wanted to be free, not by proving her wrong, but by letting go. And though he didn't know it yet, that decision, that quiet, uncertain desire to forgive, would become the turning point in his story. It was no longer about revenge or pride. It was about healing what anger had broken for too long. Ethan sat in his office late at night, the city lights glowing outside his window. The deal had gone through. His startup was now officially successful. The kind of success he used to dream about. Yet, as the congratulatory messages poured in, he felt nothing. The emptiness that had followed the dinner still lingered like a shadow. He had won the argument, silenced his mother in front of everyone, and proved his worth. But the victory had no joy. It felt like standing at the top of a mountain alone, with no one left to tell. His phone buzzed. It was Ryan again. He hesitated, then answered. Ryan's voice was quiet, almost tired. "She's been asking about you again. You should visit her, Ethan." Ethan leaned back in his chair. "I don't think that's a good idea. She won't listen." "She's not the same," Ryan said. "She's been quieter lately. I think she's realizing things, just talk to her once." Ethan stayed silent. He wanted to move on, to focus on work and forget everything that happened. But the thought of his mother sitting alone replaying that night unsettled him. The image of her trembling hands, her lost expression, it wouldn't leave his mind. He had wanted her to feel what he felt for years. Now, he wasn't sure if he had gone too far. The next morning, as he was checking his emails, one notification caught his eye, an alert from the bank. His automatic payments to his mother's account had failed again. He had canceled them that night out of anger. But seeing her name there, the reality of what that meant, made him pause. She had depended on that money for months. Without it, she would be struggling. He stared at the screen for a long time. Then he stood, grabbed his jacket, and walked out. The drive to his mother's house felt longer than usual. The closer he got, the heavier the air felt. When he finally parked outside, the house looked smaller, lonelier than he remembered. The curtains were drawn and the lights inside were dim. For a moment, he almost turned back. But then, he saw a shadow move near the window and he knew she was home. He knocked gently. There was a pause, then slow footsteps. The door opened and Margaret stood there. She looked older, tired, and softer somehow. Her sharp eyes were dull, her voice low. "Ethan," she said quietly. "I didn't think you'd come." He swallowed, unsure what to say. "Can I come in?" She stepped aside silently. The house smelled faintly of tea and dust. The living room was neat but quiet. Too quiet. He noticed some unpaid bills on the table, along with a half-finished crossword puzzle. For the first time, he realized how small her world had become. Margaret sat down, her hands folded on her lap. "I guess Ryan told you," she said. Ethan nodded. "I didn't mean to embarrass you that night," she continued, her voice trembling slightly. I don't know how to talk to you anymore. Everything I say comes out wrong. I wanted you to be strong. I thought pushing you would make you try harder." Ethan stared at her, feeling a mix of anger and sadness. "You didn't push me, Mom. You broke me. You made me believe that nothing I did was ever good enough." She lowered her gaze. "I know," she whispered. "I see it now. I saw it that night. I didn't even recognize myself. You were right. I took my pain out on you. I thought I was helping, but I was just scared. After your father left, I didn't know how to love without control." The honesty in her words disarmed him. He had imagined this conversation 100 times, always with shouting or blame. But now she just looked small and human. The anger that had fueled him for years began to fade, replaced by something softer. Empathy. He sat down across from her. "I was angry for so long," he said. "I wanted you to feel the way you made me feel. That's why I said what I said at dinner. I wanted to hurt you back." She nodded slowly. "You did," she said. "But I think I needed it. It made me see what I'd become." The room fell silent. The ticking clock filled the air. For the first time, they weren't mother and son at war. They were two broken people facing the damage between them. Ethan looked at the stack of bills again. Without saying anything, he picked them up and set them aside. "I'll take care of these," he said softly. Margaret shook her head. "No, Ethan, you don't have to. I'm not doing it out of guilt," he interrupted. "I'm doing it because I want to. You're still my mother." Her eyes filled with tears, but she smiled faintly. It wasn't the cold, proud smile he was used to. It was fragile, almost grateful. "You've grown so much," she whispered. "I wish I had seen that sooner." Ethan looked around the house that once felt like a prison to him. Every corner held a memory, some good, some painful. For years he had tried to escape it, to prove he didn't need her approval. But standing there now, he realized something. Forgiving her wasn't about excusing what she did. It was about freeing himself from the past. They talked for hours. About the past, about his company, about Ryan. For the first time in years, their words weren't sharp. When he finally stood to leave, Margaret followed him to the door. "Ethan," she said softly. "Thank you for coming," he nodded. "I'll call you soon." As he stepped outside, the night air felt lighter. The street was quiet, the moon glowing above. He walked slowly to his car, breathing deeply. For the first time in years, his chest didn't feel heavy. He hadn't forgotten what she'd done, but he no longer carried the need to punish her. He had faced the pain, and now he could let it go. On the drive home, memories flooded his mind. The arguments, the years of resentment, the nights he cried himself to sleep feeling worthless. All those moments had built the wall between them. And tonight, that wall had finally cracked. When he got home, he stood by his window, watching the city lights blink in the distance. He thought about how revenge had seemed like the answer. He had believed that making his mother suffer would give him peace. But now he knew the truth. Revenge doesn't heal wounds, it only deepens them. The real victory was choosing not to let anger control him anymore. A few days later, Ethan sent his mother a bouquet of lilies with a small note. "Let's start over." She replied with a simple message. "I'd like that. Life didn't change overnight." They still argued sometimes, still misunderstood each other, but the bitterness between them was gone. Ethan learned to forgive, not because she deserved it, but because he deserved peace. Months later, as his company grew, Ethan found himself speaking at a business conference. When he looked out at the audience, he saw her, his mother, sitting in the front row, clapping with tears in her eyes. For the first time, she wasn't criticizing him. She was proud. After the event, she hugged him tightly. "You made it," she whispered. Ethan smiled. "We both did." That night, as he sat alone in his apartment, he realized something important. Revenge may silence your enemy, but forgiveness silences your pain. His mother hadn't changed overnight, but something in him had. The boy who once craved her approval no longer needed it. He was no longer fighting to prove his worth. He had found it himself. He looked out at the city lights once more. The past was still there, but it no longer defined him. He had learned that real strength wasn't in striking back. It was in walking away from the fire without letting it burn you anymore. Ethan smiled to himself. Sometimes the loudest revenge isn't words or anger. It's peace, quiet, steady, and unshakable. And as he turned off the lights and went to bed, he knew he had finally found it.